Well, hello, Seven Blue. Boy, do we have a doozy for you today. Expect to be careful and neat and take your time. I'm going to attempt to do the two major problems we're asked, all each on its own screen. You should utilize the space of your graph paper and make sure that everything is nice and clear. There are certain points where I have to write small, but I will be saying everything that I write down. And a train just drove by. So L107, Happy Freya's Day, volume and surface area of compound solids. And what a compound solid is basically anything that I can break up into other parts. And we've seen that before. This is a desk. It's not the best picture of a desk. It is what they give us, though, or what I was able to draw. Please draw up the desk. You don't need to color it in brown as I did. It's probably best that you don't. And then name all the dimensions given here. And again, this wasn't drawn perfectly to scale or anything like that, so please don't be super judgy. What they're going to ask us for this is two things. One is, what is the volume of this? And secondly is, what is the surface area of the exposed figures? But in the end, they want our answers to be in feet. So their encouragement, and as part of the directions, is first we're going to convert everything to feet, right? Now, so that's something that we're going to be doing kind of as we move forward. The second question that we'll be dealing with is, what is the volume of this? Like if I was going to fill it all with sand, how much sand would I need? Or milk or whatever. But why you'd fill a desk with milk or sand, I'm not really sure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this up. Because it's a compound solid, I'm going to break this up into parts. See that division I'm making there? And that division would go over there. That's going to be the kind of the top piece, right? And that's something I want to consider as I'm working through. Then I'm going to draw that top piece out. And I'm going to name its dimensions in feet. So we know that 60 inches would clearly be 5 feet. Oh, well, let's get there in a second. Then I'm going to draw out what would be my two kind of drawer pieces. The one on the left and the one on the right. So I've broken it up into 3 different compound objects in order to determine its volume. Now I'm going to go ahead and do some labeling. So on that top piece, I need to convert to feet. So I know 60 inches is equal to 5 feet. This dimension right here is 30 inches. So 30 inches would be, well, just 24 inches. So 2.5 feet, right? This little part here, this little heart of mine right there, well, you'd have to look at it over here and go, okay, so that thing is 24 inches. And then the whole thing is, so 24 inches is 2 feet. The whole thing is 2.5 feet. So that little portion right there would have to be, if we did 30 inches minus 24 inches, it would be 6 inches. So we know it is precisely 1/2 foot. I'm going to go ahead and name the dimensions on the other pieces too, even though I have 2 of them. So I've got this 18 inches. So I know that that's 1.5 feet, right? I've got this dimension taken care of at 1.5 feet. This dimension, well, that's the height of not the whole. Remember, that's not the 30 inches. That's my 24 inches. So I'm going to put that as my 2 feet. Because remember, we took the top piece off. Then this depth going back is the same as that depth. So that would be 2.5 feet. And obviously the dimensions on my second drawer are exactly the same. So when going to figure out volume, if I just look at the top piece, I could say that's LWH. And then when I look at my 2 drawers, I have 2 of them. And so I'll say 2 times LWH. Then we'll start filling in. So if I'm focused on the box or the kind of the top portion of the desk, I've got 5 feet times 2.5 feet times 1/2 foot. Now I'm going to add that to what are my drawers. So my drawers are 2 times, and then what do I've got? I've got 1.5 feet times 2.5 feet, and then my height is 2 feet. Again, I'm crowded for space. Don't crowd yourself. You've got room, right? Make sure you're using it. All right, so let's deal with my top portion first here. Now, I have got some mixed numbers in there, so I have to convert those to improper fractions. So I know that 2.5 feet is 5/2 feet times the 1/2 feet. I have a similar situation going on in my drawers, so I'm going to take that 1.5 feet, I'll call it 3/2 feet, and my 2.5 feet I know is 5/2 feet. Then my 2 feet. Now, I didn't teach you cross-canceling, so you wouldn't use it. If I look at my first situation, the top portion, there is no cross-canceling available. So I'm just multiplying straight across. 5 times 5 is going to be 25, and 2 times 2 is 4. So 25 feet cubed. All right, I do have some cross-canceling here, so I could do this 2 and that 2, and that makes that go away. I also have it here, that 2 and that 2. So really, I'm just looking at 15 feet cubed. Now, 25/4 feet, I know, is 6.25 feet cubed. Feet cubed. Plus my 15 feet cubed. And then that would equal, so 21.25 feet cubed. And I box that up. Now, if you're following along with your book, which I don't necessarily encourage, they say go decimal, and I say no, don't go decimal. I don't think decimal makes it easier, and we're Americans. We don't talk about 6.5 feet. We say 6.5 feet, so it's more appropriate to answer the way we did. So I love your book, but you know how I feel. All right, now the doozy part. So what if they also want to know the surface area of exposed surfaces? So I'm going to redraw, and I highly suggest that you redraw a nice clean one. So here's my thing, but instead of naming it out in inches, this time I'm going to name it all out in feet. So I knew this was 5 feet. I determined that that was 2.5 feet, and this was 2.5 feet. This was 1.5 feet. This was 1.5 feet. Now, this little portion here, we determined that that would be, well, I mean, if the top is 2.5 and it's taking out that small portion, it would have to be 1/2 foot, right? We had figured that out because we knew about this 2 feet. So 2 feet plus 1/2 foot equals 2.5 feet, and that makes sense. Now, in order to deal with surface area of the exposed surfaces, I want to kind of make some good choices here. Now, what it's resting on, the floor, that is not exposed, so we're not going to calculate that. Also, if we break this apart, and I am going to break this apart kind of like we did before, but what we're going to do is we're going to talk about things like top and bottom and left and right and inner left and inner right. So this is my top, and I know that my top would be 5 feet by 2.5 feet. I'm just going to set that up, yeah? Now, there is a bottom, but I actually want to wait to do the bottom at the end. So we'll wait for the bottom after doing the other things. Now I want to talk about this guy. I'll call that the right. Now I also have that guy, the exact same shape over here. That would be the left. And because they sit on the outside, I'm going to call that the outer left, outer right. Now, because there's 2 of them, I'm going to multiply whatever I'm doing by 2. And then clearly, this is a square, basically. So I'll say 2.5 feet and then squared, right? Because they're both 2.5 by 2.5. And again, I'm multiplying by 2 because I got 2. Now, if I have an outer left and right, think about what's going on in here. This thing, that piece, right? That I'm going to call my inner left. Now, I also have an inner right. So I'll say, okay, inner left, right. There's 2 of them. And then what are my dimensions there? Well, I know that I've got my 2 feet. And then the height of that, well, if the whole thing was 1/2 foot, going back, that would have to be this 2.5 feet, right? Hopefully you're still with me. All right. Now let's talk about this piece, what I'm going to call the front. Now, we also have a back, and they're going to be congruent. So I'm going to call this front/back. Now, I have 2 of them. Now, the way I'm going to deal with this is I'm going to do this as area is difference. So I'm going to imagine the whole shape, right? The whole shape, and then I'm going to subtract off this portion. We've seen that before. It's called area is difference. So the whole shape would be my 5 feet by, 5 feet by, we would know that to be 2.5 feet, right? Those are our dimensions there. And then what I'm doing is I'm subtracting off that brown kind of shaded portion. And I know that those dimensions are 2 feet. And then what would be the width? Well, if you think about it, so this is 1.5 feet. That's 1.5. Those together are 3. I know the whole thing is 5. So that width right there must be 2 feet, right? So I'll put 2 feet. Now, let's deal with the bottom. Now, so the bottom is this portion. What's sitting kind of under or above where your knees would be if you sat in this desk. So that's kind of this idea, right? That's my bottom. Look at my bottom. So what are the dimensions there? Well, the dimensions would be clearly 2 feet. We just figured that out. And going back, it would be 2.5 feet. Now, this is where I'm going to do some erasing because I want to keep this all on one screen. You shouldn't erase anything. You should just maybe go below or wherever you have space. But what I'm going to now do is give myself some room, and I'm going to bring this over here. So I'll say, okay, my top is 5 feet. Turn this into an improper fraction, so that'd be 5/2 feet. If I work that through, that's 25/2 feet squared, which would be 12.5 feet squared. All right, now let's do my bottom. So again, my bottom is 2 feet times 5/2 feet. Cancel, cancel. Simply 5 feet squared. All right, let's do the outer left, right. So that's going to be 2 times 5/2 feet squared. Don't you dare cancel because you have to follow PEMDAS. So that's going to be 2 times 25/4 feet squared. And then I can cancel, making that a 2. So that'll be 25 halves feet, and that'll be 12.5 feet squared. All right. Let's do our inner left and right. So I've got my 2, make more erasing, don't you dare erase. 2 times 2 feet times 5/2 feet, cancel, cancel. So I'm basically just left with 10 feet squared. And then this one, I'll do some work over here. So 2, open parentheses, 5 feet times 5/2 feet. And then minusing off what would be 4 feet squared. And then just do a little bit more work here. So that would be 25/2 feet squared minus, and what I'm doing right now is with that 4, is I'm going to turn it into 8/2. So 8/2 feet squared. Then I'm going to bring it up here now. Okay, so that'll be 25/2 feet squared minus 8/2 feet squared would be 17/2 feet squared. Now I can cancel and be left with 17 feet squared. And I'm going to add these all up, and I'm going to get my surface area. So let's do this in this order. So I'll go 12.5 plus 12.5. That's 25 feet squared. Plus 5, we're at 30, 40, 57 feet squared. Woo! Wow, what a Friday lesson. The good thing, I guess, is I'm not officially assigning you any homework, and we'll do the split on, Monday. Okay? Hope you're well. Have a great weekend. Remember, you can reach out to me anytime. Bye.